All right, Jeff Dowtin, two-way contract. He got it. He got it, fellas. He's played well enough, and we all thought he did. We talked about maybe filling on one of those roster spots. Well, he actually got the two-way spot, Kyle, since you want to talk basketball, not baseball. He got the two-way spot. What are your thoughts on him? David Jones, they actually put out something on him, too, getting the other two-way spot. And Justin Edwards is the one we also know about. So the 3 two-way spots right now seem to be locked in. And it also, when we go to your guy, Keve Aluma, he did not get it.
Yeah, it's funny that we're 35 minutes in. We somehow have not talked about the headline of the show, but we will talk about some Jeff Dowtin. I'm glad they were able to get Jeff Dowtin on a two-way, because I think the final roster spot, or one of those 3 final roster spots being used on a guy who baseline I don't think any of us really want to play, would have been a misuse of resources. Like, the hope would be you can get better veteran guys on that sort of minimum deal. And Dowtin is, as we've said many times, I think a quad A, the NBA version of a quad A player, where he's a little too good for the G League, not quite good enough for...
What sport does quad A refer to, Kyle?
Well, Derek, the sport that's not a real sport, but it's good for analogies for sure. So it's good that they were able to get him on this type of deal, because I would have been, I wouldn't say upset, but I would have been like, that's uninspiring. So I'm just surprised that they were able to convince him. I would have assumed that at this point, he's played enough NBA minutes and shown enough that you would think he'd probably have on one of these teams. There are a lot of bad teams in the league. You would think one team, maybe like a Detroit or a rebuilding type team, would give him like the 13th or 14th roster spot to be a backup ball handler. I will say, I think given that Kyle Lowry is the backup point guard, that this is probably a better two-way opportunity than most would be, because you would assume at his age, he will probably miss a decent amount of time this year, right? Like that, it feels inevitable for somebody his age. And I say that as someone who's only like 4 or 5 years younger than him. I think I can't remember what exactly our birth date gap is, but I would just assume Kyle Lowry will miss some time. And that being the case, Jeff Dowtin then has a very clear path to being like the backup guard on those nights where Lowry's out, or even if he's not hurt, if you just want to give Kyle a night off on back-to-backs or 3 games in 4 nights. So I think Dowtin will get some opportunities. I think he'll be just fine in that sort of two-way role. And I think given that they have 3 two-way contracts to give out, I'm perfectly okay with one of those being used on a guy who is in this mold where it's like he could step in and play on any given night. And the other guys are, like in Justin Edwards' case, he's a 19-year-old project sort of player. I'd rather use more slots on those guys, but one of them on a Jeff Dowtin type player, completely fine to me.
Yeah, I think a couple years back when they increased the two-way slots from 2 to 3, it made using a spot on someone like this perfectly feasible and defensible and probably smart. You are going to need to, there's going to be injuries. You're going to need to pull up a guy who can credibly defend, who can handle the ball a little bit. Might not necessarily be good enough at anything to warrant a long-term look, but can step in, knows the system, both because he played here a little bit before and played for Nick Nurse in the past, and can eat up some minutes when called upon. And I think that is what you're looking for out of Jeff Dowtin. The other 2 spots, developmental, evaluation, see what you have. I do wonder whether or not Justin Edwards, quite frankly, is deserving of one of those final 2 spots. That's where I would look. Can you find someone, whether that is someone like Aluma, whether that is somebody maybe like Mintz, who you might want to bring in and try out there? Because quite frankly, I don't think I've seen enough from Edwards to justify. I don't buy his NBA potential all that much. But I think that is a question for someone else, not so much for should Dowtin have a spot. I think Dowtin makes perfect sense.
Silly like the mayor.